Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by Ndis Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
So welcome to SILosophy. Today I'm joined by Debbie and Min from Ndis Property Australia. Thanks guys for coming in.
Hi, how lovely to be back.
Yeah,
with you on the couch.
Yeah, another couch. Another day, another couch. To begin with, for those people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, tell us a little bit about both of you and what you do at Ndis Property Australia.
I'm the director of the company, Ndis Property Australia. We work in the area of SDA, doing many facets of the Ndis world, in particular research analysis, sales and marketing, procurement support to other providers. So we do a lot of things out there in the SDA world, and it's really fun. Yeah, Debbie?
I'm General Manager of Ndis Property Australia. Yeah, so we started very much in the sales and marketing space of purely SDA, but we've evolved hugely over the 4.5 years we've been going, much more into a consultancy advisory space now, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And you've recently started looking in the SIL space, so expanding out from SDA into SIL, which makes a lot of sense because they both need housing. And tell us about the journey of moving from SDA to SIL.
Is it really a journey? I think it's more about, the need of Ndis housing is so strong and massive that we can't just say focus on our efforts on SDA only, because the SIL world feeds the SDA world. So we know that there's an impending oversupply of housing around Australia, in certain parts of Australia for SDA. But we want to work out, well, what else is needed other than SDA? Because when we talk to providers out there, they always say, well, what else do you have that's not SDA? So that's been a constant theme the last 4 years. So how can we add value to the marketplace for SIL housing and other housing, ILO, MTA, respite, and whatnot? So it's been on the back of our mind the last 4 years, and now it's really come to the forefront. Now, well, SDA is getting to that level where it's maybe a bit too much in certain areas. What else can we do to help with participants and providers with the other housing? I guess, yeah.
And on the other foot too, Min, is of course we work with investors, and just the way that the SDA market has moved. Yes, there's impending or there is oversupply in a lot of areas. The SDA that's needed out there is for a lot of investors, it's just out of reach now financially.
Right.
It's not feasible. So they still want to get into the NDI space. They're really keen. They want to invest in NDI's property. They want to have an ethical investment. They want to help. And this is an option for them that it might not have the same high yields that they could potentially get with SDA, but they're still getting a good income from an NDI's property, helping out people who need housing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what, from your perspective then, what's the difference between a SIL house and an SDA house?
Physically, there's a big difference. Let's go back a little bit. Before SDA was even there, what was accommodation out there for providers or participants in the disability space? It was pretty much a normal house. An old house that's normal rental, $400 or $500 we can rent, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms with, one care on site with, 3 or 4 or 5 participants.
Maybe some accessibility modifications.
That's a maybe. That's a standard house. Then came along this thing called SDA and SDA housing, which was more so compliant, extra large homes for accessibility or other categories, which gave more choice control, independence for these participants. Now, in between those two extremes is that middle ground, which is a SIL house is pretty much a norm. For us now, it's a brand new house with slight modifications. It may be only one accessible bedroom, bathroom, only one. Slightly bigger doorways and hallways.
More bathrooms.
Yes. But SDA is not needed for care service or the participants, because at the moment, all these investors want extra high income levels for their expensive houses for SDA that they've got. But we all know that SDA is only 4% max of the whole system. 3.8% of all participants are qualified for SDA. So what about the other 96%? They're not being looked after for housing. So there's a gap here. So we all know that there needs to be more housing for participants who are not SDA, and we should be focusing on the creation and deployment of delivery of such products to the marketplace, which are 3 or 4 bedroom homes, which are brand new and slightly modified. Slightly, yeah.
So one way we're looking at it is they're almost like a co-living house, because that is essentially what it is, but it's an accessible co-living house or partially accessible co-living house that is perfect for a SIL space.
And in the marketplace, Tania, we all know there's lack of housing for everyone, all Australians.
Yeah.
That's a fact. But participants also they're also Australians who are lacking housing as well. So, but no one's catering for that niche for normal housing. So when we say SIL housing, it's really much a disability-friendly home for people who don't qualify for SDA. And the only way is via a new build. The only way is via a new build with head leases by providers in the areas they want. That's the only way, because guess what? The only other way is to line up with 4 other people in a line in front of the house and be knocked back every single time. It doesn't work out there.
And is that how you help SIL providers? You help them choose a location, get the house built so that they can use that for a SIL property?
So we're doing this from a grassroots level in Melbourne at the moment with SDA providers and SIL providers, the large groups, the big brands everyone knows, and they're giving us feedback as to their desire for certain locations and areas for SIL housing and the quantity and the time frame. So we talk to them now at the moment. In particular, this whole, I don't want to go off track here, Debbie, but group homes which are being defunded or phased out, which we know of are in play there at the moment. There's an impending explosion of participants coming out of the system, the state system, who are state-owned, which come into SDA investment, private investment. So there's a lot more to be done out there. And at the moment, there's a big gap in what is needed versus what is being delivered.
So just explain that for a minute for someone who isn't across the SDA side of things. So what you're talking about is when the NDIS released SDA funding all of those years ago, well, actually wasn't that many years ago, they had people who were in government housing that were disability homes, and they call that legacy stock. And that legacy stock was given a transition time or a period of time that it could be funded under NDIS. And at the end of that time, the idea is they would be funded under SDA or other housing. And so that's what you're talking about. All of these participants who've been in government housing, now that's going to be not funded anymore.
Essentially, yeah. So legacy actually refers to properties that are for 6 or more tenants.
Okay.
And that they were or they will be defunded within 10 years of the SDA rollout, which is, coming up in 2 years, in a year and a half in some jurisdictions. The group homes, the majority of the participants we know of are actually in the group homes, which is less than 6. Or in some cases probably are. If they're not in the SDA enrolment, they could well be more than 6 participants living in a home.
But assume 5.
Assume 5 per home. So they're group homes. But if they're enrolled in the SDA system, they're basic level, they're not built to any SDA category requirements, and they're certainly not fit for purpose. And so the ones that we're aware of, there's thousands of participants that are living in these group homes, and they are...
We're talking about Melbourne here.
This is Melbourne.
4,000 or 5,000, yeah.
And they are currently under state government leases that will expire at the end of 2025.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily legacy, but it's part of that grandfathered into the system group homes.
And the state government there and the Vic Homes is covering all the costs of support workers, and they actually own the housing as well. So these large SIL providers, they're in there on a 5-year contract just to help maintain that bridge there. In 12 months from now, they'll be phased out and they'll be coming out of those government homes to go into the private SDA rental market, yes.
And is there enough SDA for them?
Nowhere near.
Nowhere near it.
At the moment, I think there's about, I'm guessing 400 empty houses out there in Melbourne, times 2 spare rooms, which is 800.
800 to 1,000 places, maybe oversupply at the moment. Yeah, that's not 4,000.
But when that 4,000 comes out,
yeah,
not enough.
Yeah. And yeah, look, a lot of them may not qualify for current SDA levels that they'll need SIL.
Yeah. So then the idea is that they will then go into SDA or SIL, and then in other areas where, obviously that's state by state, every state would have a proportion of government housing that rolls in. but potentially there might still be the need for extra SIL and maybe extra SDA as well. And so
Absolutely.
what you do then is identify these gaps and this demand in the market and help pair an investor with a developer.
We're trying to, like up until now, up until only like 2 weeks ago, which is mid-November, we had no idea the mechanism or the structure and the who and the how.
Yeah.
We had no idea. We just knew that these group homes were out there, but we didn't know where they belonged to.
Yeah.
Now we know. You know who they are. So, but they're like, we're under contract. We can't break it. We're stuck in place. Choice of control, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
Can we move them out? Move them where? So there's a government contract in place where they have to wait till 5 years is up, which is next year.
Yeah.
And then their SDA funding, which is 20 grand per person, needs to be turbocharged, change of circumstances very quickly to move out into the proper brand new empty SDA homes.
Yeah.
So
That's a big challenge.
COC on 4,000 of them, that's not going to happen overnight. No.
Yeah. I've heard of a few government departments who are becoming SDA providers themselves to continue supplying this property as well. So it seems like there's a number of different things evolving in that space.
There's going to have to be able to house that many people moving forward. The SDA market can't do it.
The problem has been up to now, Tanya, all those houses that have been built all around Australia have been in the wrong areas. Outer suburbs.
Greenfield is
too far away.
The new burgeoning estates that in 10 years are going to be great locations, but not now.
Yeah, right.
So the challenge is trying to convince said provider or said participant and families to agree to a house which is 45 minutes that way.
Away.
They're like, it's away from their supports and their amenities, what they used to.
The carers might not even want to travel that far. Yeah.
And I'll give you an example, Danielle. One of our providers was out inspecting houses in west of Melbourne about a month ago, and he happened to walk across the road to door knock 3 houses side by side in Cranbourne, right?
Cranbourne? That's east.
No, it was. I apologise. I don't remember the exact suburb, but they said he door knocked every one of these 3 houses side by side, and all the participants said, "We want to leave, go back to Frankston. We don't want to be here." So they were, I don't know, they were put there because there's nowhere else to go, but they don't want to be there. They want to go back to where they belong.
Yeah.
Which is other direction.
In their community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So therein lies a problem. Do they want to go there? Is it fit for purpose? Is there choice of control?
And how do you find a house in those areas that is brand new, that meets SDA standards?
And in that particular case, we know Frankston has a huge undersupply.
Yeah.
And demand. Yeah, SDA. So that's what we're seeing everywhere.
It's a jigsaw puzzle, Tanya. Trying to find the right people who have the money to spend the money and find lockdown rebuilds in those infill areas, and the confidence that there will be the participants will be there. But you got to find those participants first with the providers.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we have them here ready to go. Let's go.
Yeah, it's chicken and egg, isn't it? Throwing around. Yeah. From your perspective, if you were approached by a SIL provider who wanted to start delivering SIL and needed a home, is your suggestion that they then find a participant before they find the home and look in areas? Or are you saying that they do have to build? How does a SIL provider who comes in wanting to finance this themselves, they've got, they've been doing a community access program for the last 2 years. They've got one participant who needs housing. They've decided they're going to become a SIL provider. This is something I hear every single day. And they want to get started and they say, look, I've got a participant. I'm just going to rent a house, or I'm going to build a house, or how do they go from that? What's the right way of doing it?
The challenges are finding a site and a builder and the funds to deliver the product to market. That's number 1. Number 2 is getting them funded for SDA, which just means you got to go through the whole, well, if they are funded for something, a change of circumstances.
Yeah.
Number 2, compatibility. Can they will they live by themselves, or will they live with 1 or 2 other people? Is it Appendix H or S100, 1,000, whatever the number is, for family living? So all these factors must be in play to figure out, to juggle, to produce that. And then also the delivery of construction is 8 months to a year, 10 months?
Yeah.
Will the participants still be there in 10 months' time, or will they have gone to another house?
Yeah.
And then also trying to look online in Housing Hub and other platforms online for Ndis housing. What is available in the said areas that are available for temporary rent, medium or short term, or long term? So if there is, then maybe you park them there for a few months, for 3-4 months.
What if it's just SIL? They don't need SDA.
Well, you got to find a SIL house or home, which you can. But can you run a business with 1 participant? in a SIL no, you can't.
No.
You need 3 or 4 to make it profitable.
Yeah.
Do you have the staff to manage the roster of 24-hour drop-in support? So you need staff as well as housing and all the logistics of running the business there. So a small startup provider with 1 participant, I don't think that will work.
Yeah.
And there's also, and vice versa. The developer builder is going to say to you, before we build this for you, how long have you been around for? How many businesses do you have? Are they funded? No. Well, they won't play ball.
This is where I see participants or providers who go and just rent a local house in their name, and they, just think that that's what you do. And then they put the participant in one room and they stay in the other room. And that kind of begins their journey in SIL until someone's like...
Is that an ILO definition there, or is it something else?
I don't know what it is, but it seems to be something that's kind of done because they have a participant who needs housing and they think it's the right way to do. But there's so many risks there, right? There's just so many. There's a conflict of interest if they're really living there. I've seen lots of SIL providers who now have quite big SIL businesses, but the first SIL home they have was their family home. So they could move their family somewhere else. They renovated their home. They put a participant in. They moved out. And that seems to be, quite a common thing. I probably have 4 or 5 clients who I've been to their SIL house and they've said, this was our original family home. And they've, adapted it over time.
I'm going to give you both a thought here, which makes sense to me. A year ago, I sat down with Brendan Wolf. He gave me and another provider the concept of independent support workers, because at the moment, if participants have full choice control, they should have the right to choose their own supports, whether independent or registered. Given the new rule changes of registration being mandatory, we'll see less and less providers out there operating profitably or even operating at full stop. That's going to create more demand for independent support workers, right? That will grow, because if there's less providers,
but they're saying you won't be able to have independent support workers because they'll need to be registered. They'll be registered through the participants. So the participant will need to register their support workers.
So you're saying that
think about
the idea of independent support workers won't exist anymore? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what we don't know, but what they've said in their NJS review about it is that to use independent supports, the participant will take the onus for registering them. So there'll be a register and a participant will say, these are my support workers, and put them on a register.
But it's still possible, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's still possible, we're not saying it won't exist anymore, but if it's still possible, then we'll see more, I think we'll see more of participants having more control in that process there. And Brendan Wolf, who we talked to, you met in person.
I know Brendan, yeah.
He does that effectively by himself without requiring service.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1-bedroom apartment. No away on site. They're there 24/7.
Yeah. There's risks in that too, right? What if that person treats Brendan badly if he can't?
But imagine that in a house, a large 4-bedroom house.
And everyone's doing
with two participants with their own intimate supports. That could work.
It could work, but who then mediates if those 2 participants decide they don't get along?
True.
Or one of them doesn't have the capacity to consent for something or isn't happy? Like, I've lived with flatmates. It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge.
But back to the original question you asked me 15 minutes ago, which is, with that one provider, has that one participant, how do they find that solution for housing? Well, back to my independent support worker scenario, that could work right there temporarily.
It's trying to get outside of the box, isn't it? It's trying to come up with an innovative solution that still ticks all of the boxes that reduces your risk. So I think as a SIL provider, I think what we're saying is that you just need to be open for all different models. And as it evolves, we just have to continue to find, how do we actually run this business, balance the costs, balance the risks, balance the choice and control.
Because I'll ask Debbie this question, she'll answer it. Debbie, what's the average tenant number per house out there we're coming across?
1.
Yeah, 1 on 1.
So therefore, if
it's not even SIL.
4-bedroom house, OOA room and 1, you got to be flexible enough to allow maybe a second provider on site with their participant.
With another
1-on-1. You have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all these 4-bedroom houses out there for SDA are all 1 tenants.
Yeah.
And that is it's either 0 or 1 at the moment.
Yeah.
Very rarely 2 or 3.
And that's very against what the NJS has said that they want, right? Mm-hmm.
Because the provider cannot find any other participant into the system, in their model. There is an issue there. Yeah.
Yeah. But the NJS doesn't want to fund one-on-one supports.
Correct. But yet here they are. They're on 1 to 2, right, funding.
Yeah.
But they're living in a 1-tenant house.
Yeah.
With 3 other bedrooms empty.
So the provider's wearing that cost.
No. Other way
around.
There's no financial cost to them by having that one tenant in that. No, there isn't.
But if it's funded at 2 participants to 1 support worker, then they're only receiving half of the money they could be receiving.
Correct.
Yeah. So
there's no financial cost to the care service.
Yeah, but they're not receiving all the money they could.
Correct.
Yeah.
In theory, if they had 3 participants SDA in the house, then yeah, of course.
Yeah.
There's profitability there for sure.
Yeah.
But we're seeing so many 1s and 0s out there.
Yeah.
Are there 3 tenant houses?
There's a few.
There's some. Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a client in Melbourne who has 7 or 8 in a home.
Yes.
But the individual villas, individual rooms inside a big house, like with a ensuite,
And that's what
with their own outdoor area.
that's the path we're going down as well. The villa concept or the manor home concept as well.
Yeah. The manor home thing.
As well. So participants have their own independent living area.
Yeah.
Right? Home.
Yeah. Like a studio apartment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the
communal
social
area.
network of being in a...
And Tania, let me tell you something. We've been exploring the manor home concept in Melbourne for the last 2 months and they all love it.
Yeah.
All the big providers love it.
Do you want to explain more what a manor home is?
Yeah.
You do, Abby.
It's essentially, looks like a house from the outside, a 2-story house.
Yeah.
Inside is 5 or 6 individual apartments, 4, 5 or 6 individual apartments.
Yeah.
One being the OOA.
Yeah.
And
Which is
the other-
on-site overnight accommodation, which means somewhere the carer sleeps.
or works out of its their office,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's enrolled with the NDIS as apartments. So single tenancy apartments under the one roof.
Self-contained apartments. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It gives the feel of the house. There's a backyard, there's a fresco, there's a barbecue area, there's communal hall inside. It looks like a house, it feels like a house, but it gives them the privacy to be in their own apartment.
Because we know that at least 40% of participants would like to live on their own.
Yeah.
Whether they're funded for it or not.
Yeah.
And it also gives the economy of scale for providers.
Yeah.
SILs.
It's kind of similar to student housing in many ways, isn't it?
MTA in there as well, STA, ILO, SIL housing family. So it's a flexible environment to have that manor home there. And that's what providers want. They want that economies of scale as well.
Yeah.
They need to have that 6 or 7 to break even there.
Yeah. It sounds similar. I don't know if you've heard of the Foyer Foundation, but the Foyer Foundation's a not-for-profit. They've got maybe, I want to say 20 places across Australia that they've set up. They get old government student housing type places and they repurpose it, and they have some of it for disability housing under SIL. Some of it they do for new mums with new babies, young mums with new babies. Some of it they do for aged care, and they put them all together with communal areas and activities and things to try and bridge together. They do a lot of homelessness as well, youth homelessness programs. So they have all these different, and they've got a calculation of how much is what. But they bring them together in this government housing. The government provides the housing, they manage it all, they do the mix and they make it work. And they kind of franchise this. You can set up and register under the Foyer Foundation model and be listed to work with them. It's quite an interesting model because they're trying to look at all housing issues from all different angles. You know, the 17-year-old who's had a baby who doesn't want to live with the abusive boyfriend anymore, to the person with disability, to the older person who's lost their family or their husband or wife and are lonely, to bring them all together to try to create that sense of community with those communal areas with, 1 or 2 bedroom small houses with support on site. There's lots of different models out there. I guess it's just trying to figure out what's going to work in your area with your participants and what's going to make sense financially for you as a provider. I think often providers don't really think about the finance side of it. So they do go and rent a 7-bedroom or a 5-bedroom house without any clear plan on how to actually fill this home. Is it in an area people want to go? And I think we've kind of learnt that with anything NDIS, it's not build it and they will come. Like, you have to actually do way better than just build it and they will come. It has to have something that people want to live in. We think that disabled people don't expect a house that is as nice as everybody else, maybe. I don't know. It's like the standard. We feel that, oh, well, they're getting it for free or they're not paying for it, so they don't need a house as nice, where really, because there is quite an oversupply, people are quite picky and rightly so about where they live and where they want to be and who they want to live with. Yeah, I guess this a little bit off topic, but the cynic side of me kind of wonders, with all of these changes coming in the NDIS, is choice and control going to be impacted, and is it going to be more about saving money than it is about empowering people with disability. The schemes seem to have taken a bit of a turn in the last 6 to 12 months away from choice and control. I saw a hashtag last week that was no choice, just control. And I thought, well, that's quite of a telling, a telling thing.
We can only hope for the best.
We can.
Tania, Debbie.
Yeah. So on the future, what do you think we're likely to see in the future when it comes to SIL and SDA? Are you thinking that things like the manor houses is the way of the future?
Apartments.
Apartment living.
We're seeing a lot of investors turn their back on houses because there's too many houses empty out there. It's not working.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, participants want to live in inner or middle ring suburbs, not outer suburbs. So people can't afford to buy those blocks of land or not going to be built in inner Melbourne, inner Sydney. They can't afford it.
Yeah.
The only way is for cashed up if you are a landowner already. But the simplest reason is we're seeing a lot of one-line institutional buyers come out of the woodworks to buy up 10-pack, 15-pack apartments everywhere around the place. And I feel like that they've been in the background waiting on the fence for the last 3 years for the right moment, and now is the right moment because all the mum and dads are gone, disappeared, so to speak. Prices too high, there's too much risk now. Lending is now changing, so you can't get lending as easily anymore. So those cashed up, those people on the fence are coming out to snap up everything that's available out there. So we're seeing more apartments coming out of the marketplace. We hope that the manor homes concept picks up because that was off an idea of someone else in Sydney, which we're now bringing to market now in Melbourne. And everyone loves the manor home, but it costs too much to build. So if you're very strong financially as a builder developer, you can do the manor homes, then sure, of course. That requires us to secure the allegiance and alliance of the SIL providers to say, yeah, we want that in that location. We've got 400 participants around the area, so we'll put 5 or 6 of them in there. No worries at all. So with that in place, plus the turbocharged process of COC, change of circumstances, will ensure a rollout of a lot more good product like the manor homes in the right areas or the apartments in the right areas. Debbie?
And we're also seeing a shift from providers seeing the benefit of apartments as well, just because there's the location factor of it being in areas that they can't get houses. And I guess when apartments were first being developed, SDA apartments, they were very small. They were often studios or they were little pokey one-bedders. And then it was realised they're just too small. They need big, spacious apartments. So what's coming out now are beautiful, big apartments, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and for one tenant. So they've still got the space. They've figured out too how the on-site supports works. You've got an OOA in a separate apartment, and it has to be worked differently, how that works in an apartment complex as opposed to a house. But they're getting their heads around it now, and there are plenty of SILs out there who really do like that.
And back in the day,
model.
4 or 5 years ago, Tania, there was a lot of critics of the concierge model, and now it's the OSS, on-site shared supports model, how that works, and the minimum required to be on-site. So that's now, it's taken a few years for people to grasp the concept of running a business in that apartment complex model.
Yeah.
Because really, the logistics are an issue. Logistics of staff traveling, staff available in the area to provide the support in the said area is hard. So you got to take what you get, which is apartments or villas or houses. And if no one's doing houses anymore because it's too hard, then what's the next backup plan? Apartments now.
Yeah. I've got quite a lot of clients who do apartments and they like it. They call it the vertical villages, right? Seems to be the buzzword. They've got a vertical village, which I think sounds nice. But it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people live in apartments, right? So I think you need to have that mix. What about villas? I heard villas were very popular for a while. They're still popular?
Villas are still popular from, I think, the participants and the providers' perspective. A lot of the time they'll get their own individual apartment to live in, single tenancy. Providers like them because you've still got that economy of scale. However, it's a little bit trickier to make it work financially from an investment perspective because the villa funding is a lot lower.
Right.
Why? Doesn't make any sense. But it's hard. We have villas to sell compared to houses. We really struggle to sell them because the income's not there for an investor.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. So whilst I think there's a lot of participants funded for villas and it is a great way to provide SDA supports, it's not always as easy to make it work financially from the property owner's perspective.
Yeah. So If you had one piece of advice for a brand new SIL provider or a SIL provider looking to break into the market, what would be your advice? They're looking to go into the market in 2025. They're looking to you as experts in the space. What would be your one tip or your one piece of advice for them?
My advice would be to know your market, know your product, and know your service. Too many SIL providers, support workers, support coordinators, plan managers, whoever they may be, they don't understand the holistic ecosystem of NDIS. They don't understand it. And when you don't understand it, how can you compete or survive or evolve in that world if you don't know it? Unfortunately, there's no one teaching out there other than, it's workshops with all different organizations out there, DSC and whatnot, plenty of things out there. But unless you put the time out and the effort out to learn this stuff, and no one's going to teach you, and if you don't know the rules of the jungle, how can you survive as a business? And it's a cutthroat industry. I saw an article 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn that said the average profitability of a SIL provider is -7% to 5%. Then the question was, why would you expose yourself with $1 million overhead risk to make 50 grand? Why would you bother doing that? You wouldn't. So you got to find ways to evolve. And right now, yes, the challenges with the NDS is changing and evolving. More control, obviously, as you said, but you got to find ways to survive. And that may mean aligning yourselves up with the right SDA providers, the right developers, the right builders, the right support coordinators, the transition of participants from hospital to community, getting direct access to hospital people as well, networking, business alliances. That's the key, because you can't survive on your own as a small business, no.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's collaboration. It's being connected to the right stakeholders that are relevant to what you're doing, because you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
And if you show lack of understanding, awareness, or experience, then participants and business people will turn their back on you. So you got to know your stuff. What we all have is time. And I'm an example here. I knew nothing about the NDIS 4.5 years ago, neither Debbie. But we've come out another side showing that we can learn ourselves and teach to other people as well. So if we can do it, you can do it. Anyone can do it, and people come to us as experts now, but we knew nothing 5 years ago. We knew nothing.
Yeah.
Because no one will teach us. No one will share with us. So now, research, study, analyze, network, learn, evolve. That's what you, Mr. Mrs. Startup SIL provider, you should do.
Yeah.
Learn. It's your life. If a SIL business is your life, then that's your business, that's your baby. Keep on learning and evolve with it. That's my advice to them, yeah.
I think that's great advice. Tell us about how people can get in touch with you, and tell us about your podcast.
So yes, our podcast, the SDA Housing podcast, coming up for 3 years, early next year.
How many episodes have you done?
I think we're up to about 270.
Wow.
Or 65, something.
So
We're doing one show a week now. One show.
We were doing 2 a week most of that period of time, but we've just gotten so busy, we're managing to get 1 a week out at the moment. So please, check out the SDA Housing podcast, mainly focused on SDA, but we touch on other areas of the NDIS and SIL as well, housing.
What's come about from that, Tania, is a lot of people have been listening to our podcast, have coming through to us now after many months saying, we love your show. We're reaching out to you now because we want your advice. We want your support. And so that was for some reason, somehow, we've turned a knowledge-based platform into a way to people to reach out to us and for us to guide them even further as to how to roll out SIL supports, SDA supports, development advice, all that kind of stuff, because we're bringing on board more and more guest speakers and ourselves as experts as well to share this knowledge to the marketplace. And that's what the marketplace needs, more information to be shared. We can't hide it. You shouldn't hide it.
Yeah. And that's how it started in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a way of just disseminating information that we had.
There's
no eating ourselves over and over again.
Yeah, and there's no better way to learn something than to teach it, right? The more you have these conversations, the more you're learning, which makes your resource, more valuable also. And you're going to be joining us for the SIL Summit in Brisbane, which is coming up in May. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking on and why someone should come and listen to you.
I think by then, Tania, we'll have launched our concept of SIL housing in Melbourne and manor homes in Melbourne to show our experience and our rollout of what worked, what went well, how our interaction with SIL providers occurred, the collaboration, the feedback, just to show the Brisbane market. This is what we in Brisbane did in Melbourne because we believe in the Melbourne market, right? And that's how they also can do the same thing in Brisbane as well. So that's why we want to share our experience with the SIL housing market. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was wonderful.
Awesome. Tanya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.